Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to Next Economy Now. My name is Sean Berry, and I'm a partner and worker owner at Lift Economy. Today, I am delighted to be joined by my guest and my old friend, Laura Ash. Laura's work is deeply rooted in the transformative power of herbal medicine, balancing the revitalization of ancient healing arts and contemporary entrepreneurship for the regeneration of human and planetary health. Laura teaches students about clinical herbal medicine in her school, Land of Verse, and is also currently the Director of Operations for the Beneficial Plant Research Association, or BPRA, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting and researching vital plants and preserving the invaluable indigenous and traditional knowledge that supports their continued beneficial use. Laura, welcome to Next Economy Now.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's wonderful being here.
Great to have you. And love to start our conversation by inviting you to share some of your background and how you came to this work.
Yes, I'm very happy to share with you, and I'm really grateful that your work exists as well. So thank you so much for having me, for Lift Economy to be on this planet. I think you're doing such great work. I often say that entrepreneurship is disease and there's no herbs to cure it. And I am in that space where my love for herbal medicine came at a young age compared to a lot of my students or people that jump into herbal medicine. It often comes with some sort of ailment, some sort of aha moment. And mine came with being sick a lot as a child. I actually had pneumonia when I was 6 weeks old, again at 2 years old, and antibiotics saved my life. But being sick as a kid and actually sick, what I remember being sick every year was some sort of lung condition, whether it was pneumonia or bronchitis. I was not introduced to herbalism as a child, so I took antibiotics my whole life. I was 19 years old and I had bronchitis. I decided I did not want to go to the doctor this time. I wanted to see what else I could do. I was getting interested in food as medicine. I was getting interested in things that were outside of the typical Western culture, what we understand as allopathic medicine, which means typical, not traditional medicine, which some people say is traditional medicine. It is not traditional. It's very modern allopathic medicine. And I was starting to get sick. I knew that this was the journey I was going to go down. And I walked into a used bookstore and I saw a book on aromatherapy. And I had never read a book on aromatherapy before. You know, the herbs in my home were Advil and Diet Pepsi and vitamin C from Costco. So I was not introduced to these things as a child. And I went into this bookstore and I saw aromatherapy and I opened it up and I saw all of this information about plants, actually, about essential oils. And I was fascinated by the glossary and I looked up pneumonia and I had this list of essential oils there and it said thyme and then I think pine and lavender. So I looked up lavender and I saw what I now know as a monograph of lavender, which is describing what it is, the chemical constituents present, what it's been used traditionally for, and its modern use. And this was actually the year I was born in 1980. And I was so blown away by the fact that I never knew this existed in my 19 years of life that I bought the book immediately. It was $6 and went to the very first time I went to a natural food store in Chico, California. And I bought a lavender oil and I ended up using it for 2 weeks and my pneumonia was cured. The difference I felt after I used my lavender versus when I used antibiotics was so uniquely different. But like I had done this myself. I felt strong. I felt like my body actually knew how to use this remedy. And for your listeners, I would not recommend someone not going to the doctor if they have pneumonia, and I would not recommend them only using lavender. But I got lucky, and I got lucky for the reasons that I know now, which is lavender is actually very specific to my body constitution. I know that now as a trained herbalist. So that put me on this self-study journey of plants as healing. And I ended up getting my first job at an herbal apothecary when I was 21 years old at Tenzing Momo up in Seattle, Washington. And I started studying on the job and learning from people who were coming in and really learning about the commerce of herbal medicine. I ended up moving back to Northern California, where I'm from, and going to school to become a clinical herbalist at the California School of Herbal Studies in 2005 and 2000. And since then, I've been a clinical herbalist. So I see people in clinic. I ended up running a chai tea company at the time to put myself through school, which is when I met you, Sean. And I ran that out of La Cocina and was just doing what I could do to make myself kind of go through school and keep myself afloat while I needed that flexibility. I ended up founding an organic spa after that, co-founding it with a colleague, and was learning about the world of herbalism within the world of beauty and seeing the different view that people had. And really at the end of the day, what I got from that was people that want to be beautiful, want to be healthy, and how to pivot that mindset into health and well-being versus that vanity blanket that people are looking for. I ended up moving overseas with my husband at the time and learned about the world of Indigenous medicine loss. So we were living in the UK, and I went up to the northern Sami land with the northern Lapland, where my ancestors are from, and met with a Sami herbalist there and found out that she had very little written down, which is still true today, about her traditional medicine. And I was a new mom and newly married, and but had been studying herbs for at least 10 years, but a clinician for at least 5 years, and was so blown away how little traditional medicine was written down, how little knowledge was written down. It was the first time I understood Indigenous knowledge loss and traditional knowledge loss. I moved the next year to Tanzania and started working with a Maasai there named Sayanga, who approached me because I was asking annoying questions on a walk. I said, well, how do you use this plant? And what do you use this for? And how do you extract this? And he said, Mazungu, which is white person. Mazungu, why are you asking me all these questions? And I said, because I'm an herbalist and I want to learn from you. And he said, I want to write my medicine down. Will you help me? And from my experience with Greta Huva, the Sami herbalist up in Sweden, I absolutely said yes right away. We ended up writing a book together on his traditional medicine called The Maasai Traditional Medicine. And I learned so much from that process of why Indigenous people were losing their traditional knowledge. It's because losing their land. It's because they're being Western educated. It's because of colonization. And so I started a nonprofit based on that project called Herbal Anthropology Project, which preserves and protects traditional medicine around the world with intellectual property protection. So the goal was IP protection for the community so they could feel safe to write it down. They could feel safe to transfer it to their children without it being stolen. And then life happens. Things had to change. I moved back to San Francisco and actually acquired scarlet sage, so an herbal apothecary in San Francisco. And I acquired that to support myself and now my two children as a single mother in San Francisco. Things happen, you have to change your journey. But again, I'm grateful for my entrepreneurship skills, so I could figure out how to do that. I had never acquired a company before. So I went on that journey, and that was going really well until COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And I was starting to teach herbal medicine in the basement of Scarlet Sage and pivoted that online. From there, realized this was a very different beast and pivoted that into an online school. So I started running my in-person herbal apothecary and online school while we were figuring out what was the new reality for all of us, really. Scarlet Sage unfortunately shut down a year and a half ago. It never got back to where it was. You know, the retail market in San Francisco, in many cities, it's very challenging right now. And everyone pivoted online to online sales, and it's hurt a lot of small businesses. But I continued teaching online. Right after I shut down Scarlet Sage, the opportunity to work with Dr. Andrew Weil literally came into my lap. I have a dear friend who is an integrative physician at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who's been on my board of directors for Herbal Anthropology Project and Land of Verse. He knew I knew how to operate companies and my value in running in a company with integrity as much as possible. And so he asked me to come on as the director of operations for the Beneficial Plant Research Association. And that Dr. Andrew Weil started with a few other founders. Tim Plowman is one of his teachers that he started that with in 1979. They started it with the idea that they would be able to support the research of medicinal plants around the world. And their primary plant was coca. That was their sacred baby that they loved with the communities that they worked with in the Amazon, and they wanted to see it become more common in use for medicine, actually, and to be able to be researched. The war on drugs was happening at that time, so they shut it down in 1983, knowing that there wasn't the funding to actually look at natural products, which is what they called them. Dr. Weil obviously went off and did many other entrepreneurial ventures and had run the Integrative Center at the University of Arizona, which is now called the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And he's just recently retired. But he wanted to get this started again, knowing that the world of herbal medicine has changed, but the world of psychedelics has also changed. Therefore, people's ability to see the value in plants that might be scheduled that should not be, such as coca, or should be unscheduled for its whole plant uses, which we can talk about if you want to, that there was an opportunity to move forward with that. So I came on as the director of operations and have been doing that work for the last year.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your journey and just, appreciating the arc of it, right? Starting with your own healing and then entrepreneurship to fund your education, right? And then traveling around the world and meeting these traditional cultures. And what an opportunity to have, people trust you, right? With that knowledge. And I guess that's something I'm curious about your work now is like, how to balance certainly there's got to be relationship and trust building, but at once it's essential to save this like critical ancestral knowledge. And also it's like very tentative to release it because there's been so much misappropriation and extractive use of traditional knowledge. So I'm curious how you navigate those dynamics.
Yeah, really good question. Biopiracy is a huge problem, and we see that in the supplement industry. We see it in the herbal medicine industry. It's common amongst researchers to take this wisdom from communities and profit off of them and not have that reciprocity or benefit sharing. That's a big, big piece of the work that I do and the work that I've done internally in my spiritual journey is not wanting to be extractive, not wanting to actually utilize this for my own gain and not prioritize the community that I'm serving. And that's, I think, a human being constant struggle, especially in the Western world and as a white person, to constantly be trying to check myself to make sure I'm in right relationship with the community members that I'm supporting. So, for example, some communities are not interested in sharing this. And so that documentation piece will be private, that it's just for them, that this is not a monetary gain for them. This is for their posterity and it is for their own communities. And that type of documentation process is closed and that's appropriate for them. So in the example that I have with Sayanga, who is from the Ngorongoro highlands of northern Tanzania, the work that he wanted me to help him with was to support his economic stability. And the majority of Indigenous people, as we know, are in poverty. And they do have to leave their traditional communities in order to support their families and support themselves and often get jobs as everything from bodyguards. I've seen Maasai get bodyguards jobs to being security guards because they're very good trackers. That's what they're trained on, is tracking any wildlife that might be coming in, and also they're hunters as well. And so Sayanga wanted to write a book in order for him to teach his children that are now being Western educated about their traditional knowledge, but also to support his livelihood. So every community is going to have a different need. And if anyone is working with any Indigenous people or they're interested in doing this kind of work, being Indigenous-led is the focus for any organization to be in integrity. And for example, if they say, we don't want to do this anymore, you need to know how to stop. You need to know how to support a benefit sharing relationship. If they say, yes, we would love for you to research this plant for drugs, let's say, for example, for a new medication,
what kind of benefits are we going to get from that financially? And building those benefit sharing, these documents exist, these regulations exist in the world. So it's not actually hard to figure out how to do this at this point. It's all on the internet, and this has been established for a very long time. And I'm grateful for the BPRA board that all of them are in right relationship with the Indigenous communities they've worked with. Many of them have written the papers on benefit sharing and were some of the first researchers who made sure benefit sharing for Indigenous communities and reciprocity was the foremost ethical way that they did that research, even if it wasn't written already into the laws, which now we have laws that are built into many countries. The Center for Biological Conservation is regulation. It regulates all of these relationships with these communities.
So if that right relation can be established, there are ways that these Indigenous communities can actually financially benefit from their traditional knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some might want to start a product line and be in the world of commerce. Some want to do ecotourism. Others allow researchers to make those new medications, supplements, drugs, and therefore getting some sort of profit sharing on those new technologies as well. So there's multiple avenues that you can go down on supporting the communities financially with these types of relationships, if they would like to go down that journey with you.
Right. And it's, again, critical that it's with their avid consent, right?
Yeah, not just consent, but that it's their idea.
Right.
Right. This is often where it's hard sometimes to say, if it's not their idea, that's not a good idea, because it always is collaborative. We've had communities approach us and say, we want to do this project, and this is what we want to do is integrate traditional medicines in our clinic. We come in to say, this is what we can do, and this is how we can do it. So it is that give and take, and it is a true relationship where we might have an idea that they haven't thought of, but at the end of the day, they get full veto rights. And ideally, we're not telling them something that is deeply uncomfortable for them, but they're willing to do it because of the money. So you have to understand the weight and the power that you have as someone that can come in with funding or come in with a promise that it can change the minds of people, even if it's not aligned with their cultural values. So being sensitive to where they're coming from as well is really important.
Well, I'm curious, Laura, given, your orientation, your background, all the work you're involved in, what's alive for you? What's really giving you a lot of energy and hope in this field you're working in?
Absolutely. Great question. I just got back from some ancestral travel of my own. I went back to Sweden after 15 years of not being there, and that's my ancestral heritage, to do research on my traditional medicines and herbal medicines. And I was also in France and was able to host a retreat, a botanical perfume retreat in France. And then I also, as soon as I got back, hosted a retreat for my students at the California School of Herbal Studies, my alma mater in Sonoma County. And what's alive for me most right now is connecting people in person with plants, with nature, with one another, digital detoxing, and allowing the groundedness, and I know that sounds very vague, but allowing and watching people to sink into time and place with plants, everything from botanical dyes to making a tea to picking a plant, smelling them, meditating with them, and watching the transformation happen in real time with everybody from people that are dedicated to becoming clinicians or people that just want to relax and smell beautiful things. It all equates to the same outcome, which is people slowing down, regulating their nervous system, and connecting with nature. And what's most alive for me is that no matter what people are doing, everything from research to technology to learning online, we all need more of that. And my hope is that I can integrate that more in my personal life and my professional life.
I want to go on the herbal retreat.
I'd be happy to have Lift Economy.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
It's really special. Yeah. And some of my teachers, I'm just so grateful that my teachers are my elders. And one of my teachers, Dr. Clarissa Nicole Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, that's how most people know of her. Her guidance has really supported me to hold and facilitate these transformative experiences because I'm able to learn from her and she holds that space. Same with David Hoffman, one of my main teachers as a medical herbalist, of understanding how to keep people in what he calls the magic of the green. So as much science and research and new technologies we come up, I think it's going to be even more important, especially with AI showing up, for us to dive deeper into our traditional ways. And I read this article, it keeps coming to mind, about a year and a half ago, and it was asking all these designers what they thought the next thing was going to happen. And one designer, and these are fashion designers, one said that we were going to be more like our indigenous ancestors again. And I hold that vision for all of us to be deeply true, is that with these new technologies, we actually go deeper into the earth and deeper into the connection of community.
That's beautiful. So I'm curious, how do you see that concept of integrating indigenous wisdom and also medicinal plant knowledge with the future of healthcare and the future of the economy? How do you see those things coming together?
Yeah, I love integrative medicine, which is why the opportunity to work with Dr. Weil was so exciting to me. He is passionate about modern research, passionate about the rigorous idea of science and how we can look at a question in as much of an objective way as possible. We can look at a plant with its traditional use and sacred use and say, and what else can we find out with research, right? I think research is our ally. Traditional medicine is our foundation. And our modern research, we get to do things that we have never been able to do before with plants, which is learn about chemical constituents and tiny little molecular structures that may cure a cancer someday or may help with someone with autoimmunity. And right now, there's a project that we're doing with plants, or BPRA, that's called Plants for Women's Health. Big opportunity to see, as you and I were chatting before we got on, to see more plants being used clinically.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to see for the future. I want to see good clinical trials, because it's done with this rigorous scientific research point of view, being recognized with doctors and allopathic medicine clinics that say, hey, have you tried this or this? Let me give you all the options. I want all the options. If I was diagnosed with some very terminal disease tomorrow, I want all the options. I want integrative, I want modern, I want physical, somatic, I want psychological, I want spiritual, I want herbal, I want, pharmaceutical. I want all the options. Right now, we're only given one of the options in clinical settings, and yet the research is there. So that mindset change for clinicians does come with clinical trials. And so the goal is to bring more clinical trials for traditional medicines that we know work, but have been underutilized and underlooked at. And hopefully, these clinical trials and this research will give people the guidance. There's going to be a lot of education in the process, but give these clinicians the guidance to be able to use these plants safely in a clinical setting.
So is funding then a significant barrier, right? Because the clinical trials, aren't they really expensive?
Always. Funding is always a barrier. I mean, nonprofit work versus for-profit. You and I have had conversations about that. BPRA is a nonprofit for many reasons. I like that it's a nonprofit structure because it builds a sense of trust on research, right? We are for public benefit, only for public benefit, and therefore all of the findings that we have are public use. They will all be shared with everyone. There's no proprietary information. Even though a for-profit could technically be doing that, it's still questionable for many people about their point of view or maybe their motives around certain research. So BPRA being a nonprofit, there's always a funding issue, but we are just getting started on the funding journey for this new Plants for Women's Health project, which is a 5-year project at $10 million. And we are just starting to understand who are the funders in the space and who's interested. And what we've been hearing is everyone has a woman in their life that they want to support. So everyone's sort of interested in this. So we are looking to be funding that in the next year, or 6 months to a year.
I'm curious to bring into the conversation, I guess, just historically, like you're saying, these aren't traditional medicines, but a lot of the modern medicines have been isolated from plant compounds, right? And so as a clinician, like, how do you see the difference in the body and the impacts in the system to one compound from a plant versus a whole plant medicine?
Yeah, really good question. This is a very important tenet of BPRA is whole plant medicine. This is why Dr. Weil started the organization, is doing whole plant medicine research. We are not interested in isolating chemicals. We are not interested in doing isolated research for many reasons, and I will do my best to speak how I've learned from Dr. Weil, is that these whole plant medicines actually work so much more in complexity like the body is working. For example, when you look at turmeric and just curcumin, you can see, if you look at these, the way that they test these plants of what the active constituent is, it looks like an EKG where you see these little spikes, and every little spike is some sort of chemical in these plants. And sometimes we have hundreds of chemicals in one plant. But what they haven't seen is all of these hundreds of little guys are actually doing a lot of the anti-inflammatory action behind the scenes, and actually them as this perfect intellectual compounded formula that made this perfect plant are actually doing the majority of the heavy lifting. And curcumin is just the easiest one for us to take out because there's so much of it in the plant. But let's say, for example, we looked at thyme. Thyme is this essential oil. If you extracted the essential oil, thyme has this big spike, right, of this active constituent that actually will burn your skin if you put it on it. But if you took the whole plant of thyme and used it on your skin, you would never burn your skin because those little spikes actually have anti-inflammatory actions as well. So you see this over and over again in the world of supplementation, in the world of nutraceuticals, which is the herbs that are concentrated in a natural pharmaceutical, so highly concentrated supplements. You'll see these very often, they're very popular in functional medicine, that they're not technically what we would consider taking it as the whole plant. And so the goal is research in whole plants to see how whole plants work, and also more of the point of view of to trust that they are also complete exactly as they are, and that if we can use them and even concentrate them in whole plant, we can actually see their benefits and understand their dosage and understand their efficaciousness in a clinical setting.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I heard somebody say, like, what's the chance of, removing one molecule and then putting it into the human system? And like, that's the way to do medicine. Like, what's the chances that that's really the best way to work it out? Which is like, it's completely...
It's the reductionist view, right? And it's like how science became what it is today. It's that we can actually, now that we can look at molecules and can look at individual chemical constituents, that we should extract them. And that's put us into the pharmaceutical realm. That is a pharmaceutical, right? It is hardcore, one action, one chemical constituent. And yet all of these side effects that can come from pharmaceuticals, it's because it's not considering what one action actually has a side effect, a downstream effect, a cascade of effects. So a lot of what I do as an herbalist, when I see someone in my clinical setting, if they're on medications, a lot of what I'm supporting them is side effects of these medications and supporting their kidneys and their liver and their digestive system, because we want those meds to work. Those meds are appropriate for many people, yet they have a lot of side effects and they are detrimental to potential long-term health as well.
So from your perspective, is it helpful to get ahead of these kind of things with preventative medicine and lifestyle stuff, as opposed to trying on the back end, cleaning up the mess?
I think you can answer that question, John. This is not new to you. I know that for sure. Yes. Preventative medicine is the majority of what I do. And I can say that because people feel better. I mean, quality of life is huge. My teacher, David Hoffman, he said, we don't emphasize quality of life enough. That if you help someone's digestive system become less gassy and bloaty, and if you help someone sleep better, if you help someone with their brain fog, that's a quality of life picture that pharmaceuticals generally cannot give you. If you help someone's PMS become a little bit more manageable, or their periods become more regular, or their skin clearing up with acne, eczema, or psoriasis. And these are gentle herbs that people are taking a long time, because what you're doing is giving them a homeostasis. that is so deeply beneficial for someone's well-being. And we're talking mental, spiritual, physical well-being. The pharmaceuticals just don't even try because they don't do that. They're not looking at supporting the gut health and microbiome and balancing, inflammation in the gut. They're looking at reducing a mechanism that's causing some sort of disease or a disorder. And that's what they're there for. They're really first aid, right? Chronic first aid in many ways. And they do their job extremely well. But it's not preventative. It never will be. And I wish it was, but it's not.
So the BPRA podcast is called Plants Will Save Us. So how can a deeper understanding and appreciation of plants, inform a broader systems change approach? And specifically, as we're talking about in this podcast, how can this inform, alternative economic and social structures? Like, what do you see as the wisdom and the patterns coming out of that?
What comes to mind right away, because I am an entrepreneur as you are, and I've run many businesses, is understanding the intelligence of plants gives me a better understanding of how to step back and listen to the earth and to the seasons and to the mechanisms of what's happening to keep my life in balance, right? The earth is constantly taking care of me, and understanding that the plants have survived beautifully to take care of themselves and their friends around them, which is animals, pollinators, humans, and that we've evolved together, but they are much, much older than humans, much, much, much older, that we have only survived without them. I mean, with them, we would not survive without them. I think it allows me a sense of humbleness in taking the humans as people outside of the center of the experience. And so when I think about economies, when I think about the way we work together as humans, connecting more with plants, even drinking a tea that you've grown in the garden or taking some herbs that you've dried on your own, it allows you to be part of a bigger system and hopefully step back a little bit and ask about extractive experiences that you've had, or a way to stay in better balance with the earth, with plants, with your own body. Hopefully give pause when needing to give pause if we're in a stressful moment because the economy is going crazy. It's like, well, what is important? What is life? What are these big questions that we can ask ourselves? And hopefully we can connect deeper with each other and with ourselves and with the bigger purpose of making this world a better place for not just ourselves, but for all creatures. Maybe we can get that from plants. That would be my hope.
So one thing I heard there is like be in relationship with plants instead of kind of maybe a domination culture approach. It's more of like a curiosity and a reverence.
Yeah. As you know, my my big thing, my through line in my life at this point is re-indigenizing myself. And I say that as a white person with authority, my own authority and connection with many Indigenous friends that I have in my life, is that I think it is our job to connect more with our indigeneity. And that does involve being connected to nature. And if people are often scared of using plants, I don't know how to use it might poison me, et cetera, et cetera. And it shows how far removed we are to the comfortability of having that relationship, as you said. But if we can actually allow ourselves to learn about them again and smell things and learn about peppermint, for example, or chamomile, these are basic plants that we can have a good relationship with that are safe, that actually might help with our health. That gives us a deeper sense and a deeper connection to our ancestors, the way that they survived. Plants are in our DNA. We've never survived without them. And so connecting with your ancestral plant, the plants that your ancestors grew in whatever area they were from the world, actually allows this complete path to connecting with some ancient wisdom that you might not know you have.
Do you have a plant ally from your ancestral tradition that you're able, because you're living in a different place, right? Is there connection or compatibility there?
Yes, I know that's actually a really important thing. A lot of people ask those questions, like, because I'm not living at my ancestral homelands that my family lived in for tens of thousands of years, how can I connect with them? And thankfully, plants have moved around with humans forever. Lavender is a huge ally of mine, and that's how I got started in this world. But it's the plant I keep going back to, and it's a very sacred plant for me. And I use it a lot. I use it in a lot of different things. It's a beautiful plant also. Lavender for sure is one of my main allies. And the other allies that I have are trees. My dad's a forester, and I grew up in the Sierras. And even going back to Sweden and spending time in England, where my ancestors are primarily from, the conifers are everywhere. And different conifers grow around different areas of the world, of course, but very, very similar. So the tree medicine is really important to me. So connecting with trees, understanding the power of trees, but also, their medicinal value. The sap, for example, is very medicinal, and the essential oils and the leaves or the needles are very medicinal and have a long use of traditional use, plus building, plus wood, plus shelter. There's so many other pieces that it's an important plant. What about you, Sean? Do you have any plants that you've connected with?
Well, I'm maybe too new on trying to find my ancestral roots. I mean, I'm mostly European, but a lot of my direct lineage has been here since the 1600s. So we're kind of like homesteader colonialists. But I am this year, for example, for the first time, I'm growing Tulsi, holy basil, in my garden. And I can't tell you, Laura, how much Tulsi I've consumed in my life, like pounds and pounds and pounds. It's on my daily. And I didn't know what the plant looked like. I had never seen it. I had actually never seen it. And it's emerging in my garden. It's like a miracle. Yeah. So this whole other profound dimension, I just didn't know. Yeah. So I like to eat it, just like to eat the leaf.
Yeah, the majority of our experience we have with plants are through bottles and packaging, and it's so convenient and so great to support these companies that are doing good work in the world, but it's different.
Yeah, very different to find it processed, right? In this perfect little granule, teaspoon scoop, put it in the thing. Very different to, grow it and harvest it. And I like that kind of crunchy funkiness that comes from the raw farm rather than the full processed.
That's right. That's right. And they're all valuable. I mean, the majority of the products that I've used in my life, and owning Scarlet Sage, the herbal apothecary, thousands and thousands of products I've seen. And we launched our own product line, tinctures, facial serums, body oils, essential oils, you name it, we had it, teas. And there's something extremely important about just having a plant that that you can connect with while it's in the ground, and even know how to gather it or take care of it or watch it through different seasons. It's a different experience. It's very cool.
Tell me about coca legalization. What's happening with that?
Yes. So coca legalization, I cannot speak upon the legalization piece. That's not anything that I'm involved in when it comes to coca. I know a lot of people that I've connected through BPRA with are very involved in the legalization piece, because the reason why they want it to be descheduled, it's on the Scheduled 2 substance versus Scheduled 1. A Scheduled 2 substance does have some medicinal actions, so that's why it's a Scheduled 2. So we are hoping that it can be descheduled in order for it to be researched for medicinal value. As we know, coca has potential for helping people with ADHD, potential for people with gut inflammation, obviously focus, energy. There's all these obvious ones that we know with coca, but because it contains an active constituent, an alkaloid called cocaine, and it's extracted for cocaine, it has a horrible reputation, so to speak, and for many of the right reasons, because of the misuse of cocaine, but also of the cocaine trade. And so the goal is, how can we shift the use of it into whole plant if it does get descheduled, and therefore products are being made, tea is being made, and have it being regulated as a whole plant, and hopefully reduce the need for it being managed by the cartels, which is what it is. The majority of that plant is now being grown and managed by the cartels, which is damaging significantly to the people of Peru and Bolivia and Colombia, where it's primarily grown. These communities being decimated by these cartels managing it and forcing people to grow it and to extract it. So there's a lot of reasons why it should be legal. And there's still a long journey ahead of it being accepted to be safe for folks to be able to use it in its whole plant form.
Not the least of which is the legitimization of the traditional cultures that is just part of their culture, right? It's not a heavy drug in its whole form. It's something that you can, it's like tonifying, and it can be part of your daily life and be, safe and healthy.
Yeah, I would attribute it to like a yerba mate. Like people drink it regularly, just like they do, with yerba mate. If people go and visit those countries, I've never actually been to South America, which is sad. I need to go. But I haven't used coca in its traditional place where it's endemic to those areas of the world. But all of our board is dedicated to coca and the research for coca and the liberation of coca for the communities that do use it. They use it as their very sacred plant. They use it for those elevations that go up and down every day, and it reduces elevation sickness, and it keeps them, energized to work these high altitudes. So it's an extremely important plant for the communities that use it. And yes, racism has been a huge piece of it not being recognized because they were called lazy Indians, and that these were bad medicines by many colonizers from very early on. And it continues to have that stamp of disapproval because of its traditional medicine use. But that's, again, one of the reasons why Dr. Weil and the board, and Wade Davis is one of our board members who's very, very involved in supporting coca's legal use, are very passionate about honoring its tradition, honoring the people that use it, and supporting the cultural shift around the use of the whole plant.
Well, Laura, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners as we come to a close?
The only thing I would like to share is just deep gratitude for you and Lift Economy for the work that you do, and to encourage anyone listening to connect deeper with plants and connect deeper with their own ancestral wisdom. And I would encourage you to research that yourself. And one of the ways I encourage people to do that is just look up where your family is from and then find out what plants are growing there and see if any of them are used medicinally, and start seeing if you can integrate them as teas or some sort of, even in broths, and start connecting with that, because your ancestors use them, and that's why you're here. They've used them. Again, your family was here for the last, 300 years? But they used them for 10,000 years over in Europe. So those are in your DNA. That's why your family survived over here. And they brought them with them often. And so that's why we have these Western herbs here. That's why we understand peppermint, chamomile, lavender. They're all European plants. Right? Now they're common, they're everywhere. And plantain, for example, grows. It's called white man's footprint because it came with the white man on their feet. And yeah, it's one of the best vulneraries. It heals. So having this curiosity around it actually, I think, reduces this separation piece, because I know that people looking for belonging is such a big piece right now. And I think we can find belonging in our indigenous ways and our ancestral ways. So that's what I'm going to leave with today.
Appreciate that. And also, I just want to invite you of, what do you need right now? How can our listeners support your good work and learn more about your good work?
Yes. So come and hang out with us at bpra.org. That is where we're doing work on plants for women's health and doing any coca research. So go and hang out there and see if that's something that you're interested in donating or being part of some public events that we'll be holding in the next year. And then if you're interested in learning about herbal medicine or coming on a retreat, you can go landofverse.com, and that's my herbal medicine school. So feel free to go and hang out there, and you can contact me there. I read all my emails and I respond to everyone, so feel free to contact me anytime.
Well, thanks so much, Laura. Deep gratitude and appreciation for your work in the world. And thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you enjoyed this conversation and are looking to dive even deeper into the B Corp movement, you'll love our new podcast, Beyond the Bee, hosted by Lift Economy's Amy Allison and me, Ryan Honeyman. Beyond the Bee is your insider's guide to the B Corp movement. You'll learn about the new B Corp standards shaping our community, how the B Corp movement is navigating the various tensions and challenges of growth, and how businesses like Patagonia are putting their commitments to people and planet in practice. Check out our latest episodes and free resources at lifteconomy.com/beyond. You can also subscribe to Beyond the Bee on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.